We're using a graphing utility to help us find the solution to the following equation. One way to do this is to use the zero feature on a calculator, which might also be called the root function if your calculator is older. We'll start by setting the equation equal to 0 by moving all terms to the other side of the equation. Then we set that expression equal to y and plug it into our calculator, and then we use the zero function, or again the root function if it's an older calculator, to find the x-intercepts of the graph. So let's look at an example. We already have the equation set equal to 0 on one side, so now we take this expression on one side of the equation, set it equal to y, and then we'll plug that into our calculator. So essentially we're graphing the function y is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 4, and then we want to find the x-intercepts on that graph. So on our graphing calculator we go into y equals, and we'll plug in x squared. You can either hit the caret and then the 2 to get a squared, or we can hit the x button and then hit the x squared button to get x squared, minus 3x, and then we subtract 4. And from here we're going to select the graph button in order to see the graph of this equation. Now we're interested in determining the x-intercepts of this graph. But before we do that, let's consider why we want the x-intercepts. As a reminder, when we're looking at the x-intercepts on the graph, that is going to be an x value at which the y value is equal to 0. And it looks like we have 2 of them. And algebraically, the way that we would find the x-intercepts on a graph is that we would plug in y is equal to 0 and then solve for x. Well, when we do that, we end up with the same equation that we started with. So if we find the x-intercepts on this graph, that's going to give us the same x values that are the solutions to this equation. And in order to do that, we're going to use the zero feature on the calculator. X-intercepts are sometimes also considered to be zeros. And in order to find those quantities, we select second and then calculate. The calculate function is above trace on the calculator. And then calculating the zeros is the second option in this menu. So we can come down one and then hit enter to select the 0. Again, zeros and x-intercepts are almost synonymous. The calculator is asking us now for the left bound, so we're going to move our cursor to the left of the x-intercept that we're after. So we're looking for this x-intercept first. Our cursor is to the left of that, and so we'll hit enter to indicate that is our left boundary. We'll move our cursor to the right of the intercept that we're after and hit enter again. And then now it's asking me for a guess, so we'll move our cursor to as close to that x-intercept as we can get, and we'll hit enter again, and it now finally says that the 0 is located at -1, 0. So on our graph, let's update this with -1, 0 as our first x-intercept, and then do this again to find the second one. So again, we'll select second calculate, so we come down to number 2 and hit enter, and then we'll again be asked for the left bound and the right bound, but this time we're looking for the x-intercept over here. And now my cursor to the left of this x-intercept is going to be in this region, so we hit enter. And then we move it to the right of the intercept that we're looking for, hit enter again. And then we move our cursor down to being pretty close to the intercept that we're looking for, and enter for the third time, which now it says that my 0 is x is equal to 4, and our calculator is giving us an interesting y coordinate. This is something that happens occasionally due to a floating point error. But what the calculator means to say when it's saying something like this is actually y is equal to 0. We asked for the x-intercept, or the 0 of this function, which is to say that we're looking for the x value that causes the y value to be 0. So we were expecting a y value of 0. And again, this really means that the x-coordinate is 4 and the y-coordinate is 0 for this x-intercept. So to finish this example, we were asked to find the solutions of the following equation, and the solutions are the x values that cause the output to be 0. The x values that cause the output to be 0 are the same x values that cause y to be 0 in this graph, which means that they are the x coordinates of the x-intercepts. So we have x is equal to -1 as one of the solutions, and x is equal to +4 as the other solution. And so this is one way we can use our calculator to help us solve an equation.